A good habit to get into when you're finished with the library is to deselect the category, uncheck French style 96-inch, and close that drop-down list, and that puts your library back together. And next time you open the library, it'll be in its original orientation with the main categories open. Close your library by left-clicking on the Library tab. We're going to go into the 3D environment and take a look at our doors. When you're in 3D, if you want to move a door, you can double-click on your door to select it. It's going to be highlighted and it's going to have the gizmo on it. We talked about the gizmo when we looked at our house in the 3D environment. If you have something selected in 3D, if it can be moved, you'll see the gizmo. And the gizmo is the move tool for the 3D environment. You can move your shape up or down with the blue arrow, left or right with the red arrow, forward or backward with the green arrow. In this case, we might want to just check the position of it relative to the next adjacent wall. And you get measurements when you put your cursor over the arrow. I see 3 feet 1 inch displayed there. That tells me the distance I am from the next closest wall. If I left click on that red arrow and hold down my left mouse button, I can drag that door to the left or to the right and set it at the distance that I want. And you can check your distance from the wall on the other door. I'll kind of make them even so they're symmetric. And again, to deselect anything that you have selected, you can go up and click on the circle with the line through it. Next, we're going to add windows. Let's go back into 2D. I'm going to add 2 windows to the right of the door on the right wall. I'm going to add 3 windows to the bump out wall and 2 windows to the left wall that we drew first. We're not going to use the library. There are so many different shapes and sizes and types of windows that we created a custom window builder. And that way you can insert a generic window and make it whatever size and shape that you want with whatever aesthetics that you want. So we're going to use the Insert Window Builder in the panel menu. You don't have to have your house selected. So when you look over at your House tab, everything's grayed out. But down at the bottom, you can click on Insert Window. When you click on Insert Window and you bring your cursor over, you're going to have a window attached to your cursor. It works just like the door. We're going to move it so that it aligns with the inside of the wall, and when you touch your cursor to the wall, it snaps on. It conforms to that shape. So it snaps and conforms to the wall, and remember that's on the inside. Left click and drop it in. We'll put one on the far right side of that wall. Now I'm going to look at my window options, and I'm going to look at the height and the width of my window. We're going to set the height of our window to 6 feet 0 inches. We're going to set the width to 4 feet 0 inches. And remember, we're making the window look like the windows on our client's house. So we probably have a picture we're referencing. When we go into 3D, we can check our window, and we can apply changes on the window in the 3D environment as well. Click on the 3D toggle. You should see your window selected. If you press the letter B as in boy, you can zoom in on that selected shape. Let's look in the panel menu for more window options. In the window options, we set the height and the width of our window. Then we're going to go to the diagram or the picture of the window. It's interactive. When you put your cursor over the different parts of the window, you see a label, and that tells you what part of the window settings you want to see. So if I want to see the settings for my glass and my window covering, I go to where the glass is on the window and left click. There's my glass and window covering settings. Pretty simple. We can turn our glass on or off. If we want to see window coverings, you can turn that toggle on and choose between different aesthetic styles for window covering. I'm going to turn the window covering off. and I'm going to leave the glass on. Next, I want to look at the settings for the window panes and frame. You can find those settings when you hover your cursor over the vertical pieces in the middle of the window. It's kind of a tight spot, but if you put your cursor directly on that vertical piece in the middle, you're going to see window panes and frames. And when you left click, you'll see the settings for your window panes and frame. We're going to set our pane count to 1. The width of that is going to be set to 1 inch. But we're going to go down to our grill settings and change the number of rows and columns on the window. Let's set the rows and columns to 3. 3 rows and 3 columns of glass. Okay, that's all I'm going to do there. And the window looks great. Now, we don't have windows in the window library because we're building windows with our window builder. Our custom window builder makes our windows look like whatever we need them to look like. But if you wanted to save that window into the library, you can save it for future projects. And you can do that with any of your shapes, whether it's windows, pools, spas, kitchen islands, fireplaces, anything that you draw or anything that you make, you can save into the template library for future projects. So let's look at saving our window. Go ahead and open your library on the left side of your screen. When the library is open, we're looking down at the very bottom of the library. The last button you can click on down at the bottom is going to say Save to Library. Left click on Save to Library and your Create New Template window is going to open. This is where we ensure that the templates that we're saving are going into the right category in the library. For example, if I look at my Create New Template window now, my shape is going to the House Decor library, which is great. But the category that it's defaulting to is door hardware. That's not a good plan because I won't ever find my window if I save it to door hardware. So I can highlight over the category and change it to Windows. Left click and highlight over the category and type in Windows. The next item down says Type. That's your subcategory. It's very helpful to add descriptive information because the template preview shows the image in a 2D perspective, so we don't get a lot of details on the preview. What we can do is under the Type section, we can put in a descriptive word like rectangle. So highlight what's in the Type text field, highlight over the top of it, and just replace that with rectangle. Then go to Template Name and type in the size, 6 by 4. Below that, you're going to see Description, and that's optional, but everything above Description has to be populated, has to be filled in. Description, you can load it up or you can leave it blank. We're going to leave it blank. Go to the bottom right-hand corner of that Create New Template window. When you click OK, you're going to see a new rectangular window added to your template library. And you can continue saving the windows as you work on future projects and have lots of windows saved for easy application. Okay, I'm going to go back into 2D and insert a few more windows. Click on the 2D toggle. Let's add 2 more windows to that wall, 3 windows to the bump out, and 2 to the left wall. So select the window that's named 6 by 4. Go down to the Insert Multiple option at the bottom of the thumbnail pane. Now attach 2 more windows to that same wall, 3 on the bump out, and 2 on the first wall we drew. Remember, you can right-click to stop inserting when you're finished with Insert Multiple. Now I'm going to look in 3D, and I've got my windows. I can use the gizmo to move things if they're not spaced the way that I like them. I can double click on this middle window and put my cursor over the red arrow. And that's going to tell me how far apart I am from the adjacent shape. So I can kind of center that a little bit better. And I'll do that with this window as well. Just kind of trying to make things look a little more symmetric. Now, if I want to move more than one shape, I can hold the Control key down to add additional shapes to my selection. So for this example, I'm going to hold the Control key down and left click on the left and right window. And that way I've got all three windows selected. I can move them over and center them on the wall a little better. And do the same thing with my third wall over here. Just going to kind of check and see what the placement looks like. Maybe move both of these over a little bit so I hold the Control key down to add additional objects to my selection. And remember, if you have something selected and you want to deselect it, and when you're in the 3D environment, go up and click on the circle with the line through it, and that will deselect your shapes. So now we have the back of the house complete. That's really the focus of our presentation for these clients. We have the house correctly rendered. We have the doors and the windows added. We even added an overhang for the existing patio with the columns. One thing that you'll notice when you're drawing your shapes and you go into the 3D environment, the material that you see is a random material. So if you're looking at the house and it looks kind of white and the roof line looks gray, just remember we have a whole stage just for material application. And you can update the finish on the house to look like what the client's house looks like when we go into materials. We'll do that today once we've finished all of our shapes. So once we draw all of our shapes, we'll go to materials and learn about material application. Let's go back into 2D. A good habit to get into when you're finished with the library is clear and close your library. Uncheck the things that are checked. Left click on the library tab and close that up. And we're finished with our house. We're going to head to the next stage, and that's going to be stage 3, walls, fences, and railing. Go to the top of the panel menu and locate the next stage button. Left click on the next stage button, and that's going to take us to stage 3, walls, fences, and railing. Our objective here is to create a wall around most of the back of the house, and on the front of the house where we have access to the backyard, we're going to draw a small fence section. So we're going to be drawing a wall and a fence. In the panel menu, if you look down at your walls, fences, and railing tab, you click on the setting for what you want to draw next. We want to draw the wall first, so we'll click on wall. An important thing to know about this stage is that you do not have to complete your shapes. And that's unique to this stage. All of the other stages that you draw in, you're going to have to complete your shapes. Here, we can stop and start drawing wherever the wall or the fence stops. Okay, so we're going to draw our wall. We have wall activated in the walls, fences, and railing setting, but we're going to measure on the house where the wall starts on the top left-hand corner. So I'm going to kind of zoom into that top left-hand corner. Put your cursor on the corner of the house and roll your scroll wheel away from you to zoom in a little bit closer. That's going to be our site reference. We're going to measure 16 feet from that corner down, and then we'll begin drawing at the bottom of that 16-foot measurement. Go to your panel menu and go to your toolbar. On the last row of tools, you're going to see the measure tool. Looks like a ruler. Left click on that and you'll see a little ruler icon attached to your cursor. Works like the line tool. You left click and drag it to the desired length. So go to the top left hand corner, left click, and come down 16 feet. Left click when you get to 16 feet and you'll have your measurement. That way we know exactly where we're going to begin drawing our wall. Now it's important that we switch from the measure tool to the line tool. We can't draw our wall with the measure tool. So go over to your toolbar, and on the second row of tools, activate your line tool. Now we'll begin drawing our wall. Left-click at the bottom of the 16-foot measurement and draw to the left 12 feet. Left-click at 12 feet. Now we're going to zoom out by rolling your scroll wheel towards you, and we're going to draw down 108 feet. If you want to type that in, just take your line the direction that you want it to go and type in 108 and enter. Now we're going to zoom out and pan up. You can zoom and pan when you need to. Now I'm coming along the back wall, coming to the right 94 feet. Then we're coming up 128 feet. When you get to 128 feet, left click, and this is where our wall stops, so we'll left click again to stop drawing. Left click on the endpoint again, and that stops the drawing process. We do not have to connect back to the beginning when we're in this stage. All right, now I'm going to go over to my toolbar and switch to the Move tool so I don't inadvertently begin drawing something else. That's a good habit to get into. With your wall selected, you'll see all of the wall settings in your panel menu under Wall. The wall is separated into 3 different sections: the base of the wall cap, and the pillars. When we click on Wall, we see the height and the width of the wall. We want to set the height of the wall to 5 feet 0 inches. And we're going to set the width of the wall to 10 inches. Now click on Wall Cap. We'll leave our wall cap turned on, and we'll set the width of our wall cap to 11 inches. If you wanted to look at all the different wall cap styles, you can click on the button next to Style, and your library is going to open to wall cap profiles, templates that you can double click on and apply to your wall. You can choose whatever you like. Okay, now we're going to look at the pillar settings. If your client has pillars on the wall, you can set up your pillars to look like what they look like on the wall. If they don't have pillars, there's a pillar toggle. You can just turn the pillars off if they don't have pillars. But let's say they do have pillars. We'll leave that turned on, and we'll look at the height. We're going to set the height of the pillars to 5 feet 6 inches. The width I'm going to set to 1 foot 10 inches. And the spacing is something that's going to determine how many pillars we have. Right now, my spacing is defaulting to 24 feet. I can look at the spacing in the 3D environment. Let's go into 3D. With your wall selected and highlighted, you can make changes in the 3D environment. We can actually see the spacing of the pillars change as we change the value in the spacing section in the panel menu. Reduce the spacing and you'll see more pillars. Increase the spacing and we'll start removing pillars. Okay, you can set your spacing to 30 feet. There's another option that really comes in handy. Below that it says Remove by House. We want that on so that those pillars don't populate next to the house. Now we'll zoom out and take a look at the wall. Remember, we can change the material to match what they have when we get into the materials library. To deselect your wall, you can go up and click on the circle with the line through it. See what it looks like without all the highlighting. Now we're going to draw the fence section right here at the front of the house where you would have access to the backyard. So we're going to draw a fence section coming from the corner of the house over to the pillar. It's really important that we don't connect the fence to the wall. If the fence and the wall connect, we can't assign a different look to each section. So we have to make sure that they're separate so we can select the wall independently from the fence. We'll just make sure that the endpoints don't meet. So we're going to go back into 2D and we'll zoom in to the top right-hand corner of the house. Point your cursor on that corner and roll your scroll wheel away from you to zoom in really closely. With your Move tool activated, left click away from your fence, or I'm sorry, your wall. Left click away from your wall so that we don't have it activated. That way we can go to our walls, fences, and railings and click on fence, and the next shape we draw will look like a fence. So we're going to activate our line tool, draw our fence from the corner over to the pillar. That's going to be 15 feet. Left click again on the endpoint to stop drawing. And I want you to notice that we have a gap in between the endpoint of the fence and the endpoint of the wall. It's really important. If those two endpoints connect, we can't separate the two aesthetically. But when they're separate, I can select one, call it a fence, left click the other one, and call it a wall. Let's leave our fence selected in 2D and go into 3D. If you have your fence selected, you can open your library and look at some of your fence presets. Uncheck your wall cap profiles and just go up to the top of your walls, fences, and railing templates and choose Fence Presets. You have lots of fence presets to choose from. To apply them, double left click and see the change. There's iron spear top and white picket fence, and here's my ranch style fence. There are some higher profile fences down towards the bottom. I'm going to go with the aluminum flat top. Okay, now obviously we need a gate there. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we look at our items library. So for now, we just want our wall and our fence complete. If you want to deselect your fence, go up and click on the circle with the line through it. And we're finished with the library, so you can go ahead and clear and close your library. And we're finished with walls, fences, and railing. We can go back into 2D and we'll move on to the next stage. Go to the top right-hand corner of your panel menu, left-click on the stage bar that says Stage 3 Walls, Fences, and Railing. From there, you'll see a drop-down list of all the stages, and you'll notice that the stages are ordered. We have gone to Stage 1, Stage 2, and Stage 3. The next stage is Stage 4 Terrain, but we're going to jump ahead to Stage 7. You don't have to go in the order of the stages. You can draw shapes whenever, whatever shapes you want in any order that you want. We're going to draw our hardscape patios next and some other shapes just because they are aligned with the back of the house and we have a really clear site reference for that. So for us, it makes sense to draw the hardscapes next. So I'm going to have you click on Hardscapes and Decks, and that's a fast way to jump to Stage 7. Go ahead and click on Stage 7, and that will take us to Stage 7 Hardscapes and Decks, which means wooden decks. So if you look down in your panel menu, you'll see that you have two different types of shapes that you can draw on this stage. You can draw hardscapes or wood decks. We're going to start with hardscapes. So click on Hardscapes. Now we're going to zoom into the bottom left-hand corner of the house. We have an existing patio here, so we're going to draw that using the rectangle tool. In your toolbar, go down to the third row of tools, click on the rectangle tool. We used this tool earlier to make our square columns, but we're going to make a rectangle. This rectangular patio is going to be 20 feet by 16 feet. So we'll left click and drag our rectangle tool to the desired dimensions and left click when you get those all laid out. So the way we do that is we go to our site reference, which is the top left-hand corner of the house. The bottom left-hand corner of the house. Left click, drag your cursor to the right 20 feet, and then down 16 feet. When you get those dimensions laid out, you're going to left click to complete your shape. So that's one way to draw four-sided geometric shapes. We could have used a line tool and drawn that all the way around, but the rectangle tool might be just a little bit faster, and it's great practice to use this tool. Look over in your panel menu, and you'll see that your hardscapes default to a height of 0 feet 0 inches. That's what we want our patio set to. We'll leave follow terrain turned off. Edge trim and coping can be turned off. Let's take a look at our patio in 3D. Click on your 3D toggle. Press the letter B if you want to zoom into your selected shape. And we see our patio. Now this client would like to have more patio areas, more areas to hang out in the backyard. So they want a new hardscape patio off of the right side of the house, and then a walkway in between the two patios. So we're going to go back into 2D, draw the new patio and the walkway in between the two. So we'll go back into 2D, click on that 2D toggle. Now I'm going to pan over to the bottom right-hand corner. We'll use our rectangle tool again. Left click on the bottom right-hand corner of the house. Bring your cursor over to the left 26 feet, then down 21 feet. Left click when you get those dimensions laid out. We'll let this shape default to the height of the previous shape, 0 feet. Now we're going to draw the walkway in between the two shapes. I'll go to the bottom right-hand corner of the first patio that we drew, and I'm still using my rectangle tool. This shape is going to be 20 feet long and 5 feet 6 inches wide. So let's left click on the bottom right-hand corner of the first patio. Come to the right 20 feet and then up 5 feet 6 inches. Left click when you get those dimensions. This shape will default to the previous settings that we used on the hardscapes. Now activate your Move tool and deselect your hardscapes. Notice that these shapes are all aligned very cleanly. There's no gaps or spaces in between the shapes, and they're not crossing over into other shapes. So we call this a clean design. Everything's cleanly aligned, and that's what you really want. That's what you're working towards. Take a look at it in 3D, and you'll see all of those shapes kind of come together seamlessly. If you zoom in to where you see where the two shapes connect, we should not see any grass or any crossover. Those shapes are all very cleanly aligned. Okay, now we're going to do an exercise that is all about making a modification to a shape. Because as we've been drawing, we see modification points on our shapes. The modification points are there so that we can make revisions to our shapes without having to redraw them. So we'll make a revision to the new patio. Let's say that we've gone to get a permit and it's not passing. we've got to go back in and make some revisions. We've got to cut away the bottom right-hand side of the patio. We can't build it out that far. For whatever reason, we've got to make a revision. I have an exercise to show you how the modification points work and how to use a tool that we haven't used yet called the divide tool. So we're going to learn some new tools and learn how to work with the modification points. So let's go back into 2D. We need our Move tool to select the 26 by 21 hardscape shape. Okay, then I want you to zoom in on it. We're going to remove part of the bottom right-hand side of this shape, but I don't really have a tool for cutting that away. So I'm going to use the modification points to remove part of the shape. I'm going to need to access the divide tool to add additional modification points. In your toolbar, the divide tool is on the second row of tools. You have line, arc, outline, and divide. Left click on divide. Now go to the bottom right-hand corner of your shape, and we're going to use the grid lines to measure 6 feet from the corner to the left. I'll just count the grid lines. Remember, the grid lines are 1 foot apart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to left click when I get 6 feet away from the corner and add a divide point. Now my line segment is divided into 2 sections, a 20-foot section and a 6-foot section. Next, I'm going to divide the vertical 21-foot line segment. So I'll go to the bottom right-hand corner and I'm going to count up 5 feet, or 5 grid lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, left click and add another point. Now we can use the modification points to make the revision. But it's important that you understand that the solid points work differently than the hollow points. Activate your Move tool. We'll need the Move tool to move our points. The solid points move independently. The hollow points move a line segment independently. So if we left click on the bottom right-hand point, we can expect that to move anywhere. I'm going to left click and drag it up diagonally until I have a right angle. Next, I'll use the midpoint on the vertical 5-foot line segment to open up this space. I'll move that line independently by left clicking on the midpoint and dragging it to the left. I'll stop when I get to a 6-foot wide walkway. So I used the solid points, the hollow points, the divide tool, and I used the modification points to open this space up. That way you can make a revision without having to redraw your shape. Okay, take a look at that in 3D. This client would also like a kitchen island on this new patio. They want an L-shaped kitchen island with a grill and all the kitchen island accessories, including a sink. When you're working with a kitchen island and an accessory includes a sink, you've got to carve an opening for that sink. All of the other accessories will just fit on top or on the sides of the kitchen island. We're going to go back into 2D and draw our island as a hardscape. Go ahead and go back into 2D. We're going to stay right where we are, focused on that right patio. We'll activate our line tool and draw part of our shape. We'll use the outline tool to create the other side of our shape. This is another drawing method. Go to your toolbar, click on your line tool. Go to the top right-hand corner of that patio. We're going to left click and we're going to draw down 10 feet. Then we're going to come to the left 13 feet. Those are the two outer sides of the kitchen island. and the kitchen island is 3 feet wide. To create the other side of the island, I can use the outline tool. If you have a shape that's mirrored on both sides, you can use this method. Drag your line tool over to the toolbar, and it's just going to kind of hang out and wait until you get the new tool activated, which is the outline tool on the second row. You have line, arc, outline. Whenever you activate the outline tool, you have the question mark on your cursor. And the question is, what shape do you want to mirror or outline? Notice there are yellow squares on the ends of the 13 and 10-foot line segments. Left-click on either one. When your question mark changes to an arrow, that means that you've activated the offset function. We can offset the shape to the left or to the right. We're going to come in and offset 3 feet. Left-click when you get the 3-foot offset, and you have a complete shape. Now we need to set the height of our kitchen island. Look over in your panel menu, and under Hardscape, the first thing you're going to see is height. Set the height of the kitchen island to 3 feet 0 inches. Now we're going to go down to our lip style settings. Down below coping draw mode, we're going to see lip. Left click on the drop down arrow, and we're going to choose a round lip style. If you have a hardscape that's extended above the ground, so if there's any height, you'll have a cap or lip on top. You can set the lip style to whatever lip style you want, and then the height of the lip will set to 3 inches. Okay, let's take a look at that in 3D. Make sure everything rendered correctly. Should have a kitchen island with a round lip. Now we'll add the opening for the sink. We'll use the Carve tool for that. The Carve tool will work on hardscapes and custom shapes. We'll be working with custom shapes a little bit later. Let's go back into 2D and work on making the opening for our sink. So I already have the dimensions for the sink. We just need to set the shape that we're going to carve the opening on into what we call carve mode, right? So we're going to be drawing, but we're not drawing a hardscape, we're drawing an opening. So it's very important that you have your shape selected, and in your toolbar you want to go to your third row of tools, and on the far right side you're going to see carve. When you click on carve, the shape that you had selected is going to be kind of outlined in green or have a green envelope around it. That's really important. The system is letting you know that you're isolating this shape for a different kind of drawing. We're drawing an opening. Now we're ready to draw the opening for the sink. Zoom into the top 3-foot line segment, and anywhere below that you can draw this shape. It's going to be a 1 foot 3 inch by 1 foot 3 inch square. So let's use our rectangle tool. Remember, when you want the rectangle tool to make a square, you hold the Shift key down before you left click and drag it to the desired dimensions. So Shift key held down, left click and drag 1 foot 3 by 1 foot 3, and left click to complete your shape. Now I'm not going to measure this. If you were working on your own, you'd probably want to measure this exactly where you're going to build it. But we're going to activate our Move tool and just move it into a position that looks realistic. When you're carving into a hardscape, the carve function carves all the way through down to the bottom of the shape, no matter what the shape height is. It's going to carve all the way through. Let's take a look at that in 3D. When you go into 3D, your graphics are going to be a little bit different because we're still in carve mode. What you can do is zoom in on the highlighted opening and see that it is carved all the way through to the bottom. And if you want to see it without all of the black and white graphics, you can go up and click on the circle with the line through it, And you have to click it about 3 times to get out of that layer and get back to your normal kind of colorization. Now we've got our kitchen island, and we've got the opening for our sink. And just remember, all of the other accessories are basically going to be dragged from the library and just dropped in wherever you need them. The sink is the only accessory that we need an opening for. Let's go back into 2D. Next, we're going to do a little more drawing on the front of the house. So if you zoom to the front of the house, over on the top left-hand side of the house, we're going to have a driveway. And then we'll have an entryway coming to the setback here. And I know in advance that we're going to have a slope going down and away from the front of the house. Now we haven't plotted that slope in yet, but the shapes that we're going to draw will need to be set appropriate for that elevation change. So we'll talk a little bit about how our shapes relate to grade changes or elevation changes. So keep in mind the slope is going to go down from the house to the street in this front section. We'll draw the driveway first. It is a hardscape, and we're in the right stage to draw hardscapes. We have our hardscape activated over in the panel menu. The driveway is 24 feet by 20 feet, and we'll use the rectangle tool for that. Activate your rectangle tool. Go to the top left-hand corner of the house, left click. Come to the right 24 feet, and then up 20 feet. Left click when you get those dimensions squared away. It's important to remember that this shape is going to default to the settings of the previous shape. So we'll look over in the panel menu and we'll set the height of this shape to 0 feet 0 inches. Something else that will be really helpful, because there is a slope going down and away from the front of the house, we want this hardscape to follow the slope of the terrain. The button for that is directly below the height. Turn on Follow Terrain. The next shape that we're going to draw is going to be a hardscape entryway to the front door. And like I said, it's going to be in this setback here. So go to the right corner, again with your rectangle tool. This rectangle is 10 feet by 18 feet. Left click to begin working with the rectangle tool and drag that over to the left 10 feet, up 18 feet. Keep everything steady and get those dimensions all squared away. Left click to complete your shape. Now we'll look over in the panel menu. That shape should default to 0 feet 0 inches. But in this example, we do not want the entryway hardscape to follow the slope of the terrain. We want it to stay very flat and level. So we'll turn off Follow Terrain. Later on, when we plot our elevation change and go into 3D, we'll really be able to see the difference between the settings for these two shapes. So if we know there's a slope going down and away from the front of the house, we need some stairs going to the entryway. We're going to add stairs, but first I'll draw the handrails. These are going to be hardscape handrails that have a kind of a curve on the end, kind of ornate handrails, and that'll give us a great opportunity to look at the arc tool. We haven't worked with the arc tool yet. So I'm going to show you how to create these handrails, these hardscape handrails that have a curved edge to them. And I'm going to teach you how to copy and paste because they're mirrored on both sides of the end of the walkway. So we'll start with the line tool and then we'll switch to the arc tool. Go over to your toolbar and left click on your line tool. We're going to go to the top right hand corner of the hardscape entryway. Left click and come up 4 feet. Now we're going to switch to the arc tool. Just drag your line tool over to the toolbar. When you click on the arc tool is going to attach where the line tool left off. And that's really important because we want everything to stay connected. When you're working with the arc tool, you have 2 settings that you need to apply. The first setting is the position of the radius and the size of the radius, you can move that radius guide clockwise or counterclockwise to establish the position. We want it to come to the right, and as you move your cursor to the right, you'll see the size of the radius displayed. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. We want that radius to be 3 feet. So when you move your cursor to the right and you're at a 3-foot radius, you'll left click to secure that position and that size. Next, we'll determine the direction of the arc and the length of the arc. You can move your arc clockwise or counterclockwise. We're going to come up clockwise, half circle. That would be 9 feet 5 inches. Left click. That's going to be one side of our shape. The other side mirrors the shape that we've drawn. So we can use the outline tool to create the other side of the shape, similar to what we did with the kitchen island. Let's activate our outline tool. Take your cursor over to your toolbar, and on the second row of tools, click on the outline tool. We'll have our question mark on our cursor. What shape do you want to mirror or outline? We'll left click on either one of the yellow squares on the ends of our partial shape. Then we'll come in with the offset function. Left click when you get 1 foot inset. So we're going to stretch that offset in 1 foot and left click to complete our shape. This shape will default to the height of the previous shape. So if you look over in the panel menu, it should say 0 feet 0 inches, and follow terrain should not be on. We want another one just like this one on the other side. So when you have a repetition and pattern in your plans, you can use your copy and paste. Now it's going to copy and paste the shape exactly. We'll copy and paste it to the top left-hand side of the walkway, but we'll mirror image it to flip it around. When you want to copy a shape, the shape has to be selected. We'll activate our Move tool and make sure our shape is selected. When your shape is selected, you can copy and paste it by pressing Control and the letter C for copy. Nothing's really going to happen yet. We'll press Control and the letter V as in Victor. Now we'll see a copy pasted on our cursor, and we can drag it over to the top left-hand side. You can really just left-click and drop it in anywhere. We're going to need to mirror image it and move it into the position that we want. But first we'll mirror image this in our panel menu. Scroll down to the bottom of the panel menu and look for your Object Modification tab. In the Object Modification settings and options, you have Mirror H for horizontal and Mirror V for vertical. We want to mirror horizontally, so click Mirror H. It's going to flip it around so that it's going in the opposite direction. Now we'll move it. With our Move tool, left-click on the line of the shape and drag it so the bottom right-hand corner is in the same position as the original handrail on the right. Okay, let's take a look in 3D. We've got some hardscape shapes to check out. Go into 3D, you should have a driveway, hardscape, an entryway hardscape, and the handrails. Doesn't really look finished yet, but it will once we add our stairs, and we are going to make the slope go down and away from the front of the house. This will look more realistic. But this is correct for now, and I'll add the stairs next. I'm going to go back into 2D. It's actually quite helpful that we put the handrails in first, because the stair building tool that we're going to use is going to conform to these curved edges. We have in our panel menu a Create Staircase feature. When you activate the Create Staircase feature, you have a little staircase or a little step on your cursor that you attach to where you want steps from. So we would attach it at the end of the walkway. When you left-click and insert your stairs, the system will calculate how many stairs you need. Since we don't have a slope yet, we can tell the system how many stairs we want. Let's work through creating a staircase. At the bottom of the Hardscapes Index tab, you'll find your Create Staircase button. Left-click. When you activate Create Staircase, you'll see staircase options below that. And you can choose the type of stairs that you want. Normal, corner, rounded wedding cake, or square wedding cake. We're going to go with normal. Now when I bring my cursor over, I'm going to have a little step attached to my cursor. I'm going to drag it over, and where your cursor touches the end of the walkway is when the step is going to actually read that shape and snap on. So as I bring this down, I just need to touch my cursor to the end of the walkway and kind of center the step. Left click and drop it in. The stair building tool has modification points like other shapes, but they work a little bit differently. The outer points move independently, and the inside points that are touching the shape will stretch the steps proportionately. So I'm going to left click and drag the bottom right hand point all the way to the right so it snaps onto the handrail on the right. Same with the bottom left hand corner. Left click and drag to the left until it's even with the handrail. Now we'll look over at our staircase options to set up the height and width of our stairs. The first value that you're going to see in the staircase options is height. And what we're referring to there is the rise of the steps. We're going to set the height to 1 foot 0 inches. We're going to set the width, which is the tread, to 2 feet 0 inches. Then we're going to set the step count to 3. And as we increase that step count, you're going to see the steps extend with the number that you applied and conform to the adjacent shape. Now we'll go down to our staircase options. Down at the bottom, we're going to convert staircase to hardscapes. That's an important step. When we were working with the stair building tool, these shapes were not cataloged as hardscapes, but when we convert them, they are. Now we'll take a look at that in 3D. This is the way they should look. When we apply the elevation change, they'll look more realistic.